And so again, welcome to MailChimp Advanced Tools. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. We're going to be talking about merge tags, what they are and how to use them well. We'll talk about the final welcome and final unsubscribe emails, which will make a little bit more sense as we get into them. Then we're also going to talk about how to create a forward email or a forward button in your newsletter. And then we're going to talk a bit about subscribe forms. We do have to truncate this webinar a little bit today. We won't be including the MailChimp app, which is called MailChimp Subscribe. The reason for that is that Zoom's plugin is not working, and there's no way for me to fix that. However, if you're interested in that app, just send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get a recording that has that information in it. Okay, so we have done that in the past, and so we can make that available to you if that's what you're interested in. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to MailChimp. Please let Michelle know if you cannot see MailChimp right now, because that's what you should be looking at. So again, the first thing that we're going to talk about is merge tags. I've referred to these a few times throughout this series. We've looked at them here in the footer as one of the main places that we've looked at them. And remember that we've said when you see a merge tag, which is this asterisk, straight line, capital letters, straight line, asterisk, you don't want to change those. You don't want to delete them. You can move them around if you need to, but you don't want to type into them. So where it says current year, we don't want you to type 2019. We just want you to leave it saying current year. Because what the merge tag is doing is it's actually pulling data from other places in MailChimp. So it's pulling from your profile. It's pulling from different places that MailChimp has set up so it interacts well with your footer and other areas of your newsletter. So for example, the current year, right now if you were to send out a newsletter, it would fill in 2019. If a year from now you sent out a newsletter, it would put in 2020 without you making any changes. I wanted to show you a couple of places where they are pulling this data from. So one of the places that they pull it from is your list. Okay, so if I go over to my list, you'll see that there's these different column names. So it has first name, email address, last name, greeting. This is where they're pulling some of that data from. So if I use a first name merge tag, they're going to look at this column in my database to put that first name in there. Okay? Same thing with the last name. So if I put a first name, last name merge tags next to each other, they're going to pull this data. They're going to pull that data from these databases, from these columns. The other place that they get their merge tag data from is from your profile. So if I came up here to my profile and went down to account and then went into my contact information, okay, this is where they're going to pull your address from and your name from. So if this information is not, this is one of the reasons we asked you to put your personal name in the company organization name, because that's what MailChimp is pulling into for the copyright. Okay, so down here where it says list company, this is going to be your name. So it would copyright to you instead of copywriting to Wycliffe or Jars or SIL, etc. So that's where they're pulling a lot of that data from. We're going to show you a couple of different ways that you can use them. There are a ton of merge tags in MailChimp that you can use. We're not going to have time to go over all of them today because we would just have to have a merge tag webinar in order to cover all of them. In order to use merge tags inside of your newsletters, you're going to want to place them inside of a text box. So it can go into this regular text box. It can go into the box text box. You can put merge tags underneath buttons. You can also put them into your subject line, which I've seen a couple of people do. They've personalized the subject line so it had their partner's name actually printed there, so it seemed more personalized. Another way to personalize it is by putting dear first name, and then everybody who receives the letter will have their first name plugged into the body of the newsletter. So the way that you can do that is once you're in the text box, you'll notice that there's this menu here at the top that says merge tags on it. If I click on that, it's going to give me this drop-down list. The first one you see is open cheat sheet. If you go ahead and click on that, MailChimp will actually show you a list of every single merge tag that they have, and they'll give you a brief description on what it is and how to use it. So if you're really into this and really want to see all the things MailChimp can do, MailChimp has refreshed itself. all by itself. I don't know why I did that. Sorry, that threw me off a little bit. But if you want to see all the different options that you have with merge tags, that's a good place to start, is with this open cheat sheet. The first one that I want to show you is first name. So when we click on first name, you'll see it places merge tag in here. Now again, we don't want you to type anybody's name. You want to leave the merge tag just as it is, but you can put something in front of it. So if this was the beginning of your newsletter, maybe you say dear first name, or hello first name, good morning first name, however you want to word that. And then the way that you can see what this looks like is to click, first you have to click save and close. So we're going to go into preview mode, but if you don't click save and close first, it will not show up in the preview mode. Okay, I've made that mistake many times and got very frustrated. Every time I would go and look, it wasn't there, but it's because I didn't hit save and close. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is if you have not selected a list for your campaign yet, if you haven't told MailChimp who you're going to send this newsletter to, you also will not be able to see how the merge tags are going to work, because that's where they pull the information from. Okay, merge tags are specific to each list. So maybe you only have one, maybe you have multiple, but if that list isn't connected, MailChimp doesn't know what information to use for the merge tags. Okay, so those are a couple of the reasons they might not work for you. So once I click save and close, I can now go into the preview and test and say enter preview mode. Okay, so from here it still says test first name. In order to see what it's going to look like to my partners, I have to click this button in the upper right hand corner that says enable live merge tag info. When I click that, it refreshes, and now it's going to show me what it looks like. Okay, so that's how you can preview them. The second one I wanted to show you is just a last name one. And so if you want to do first and last name, make sure you put a space in between the merge tags, and then you can add the last name. And maybe you want to add a comma or a colon or no punctuation at all. Whatever you want to do with this, go ahead and put it in, and then make sure you check that preview mode. Okay, and remember you have to save and close, and you have to turn that button on every time you do it so that you don't make any mistakes. So it might be easy to put both these tags in there and you forget to put a space in between. And now their first name and last name are going to be touching each other like this, and you don't want that to happen. So if you're going to be using merge tags, especially more than one, do make sure that you're checking out what it looks like so that you don't end up with formatting mistakes, which is also another reason that we have you get your newsletters checked, right? Another thing that you'll notice in some other options is that I have these three right here: TNT Connect, information, greeting, and salutation. You may not have those in your list right here. The reason I have them is because if you remember back to the very first webinar, I synced my TNT Connect database with my MailChimp database. So when I did that, it imported some of the columns from TNT into MailChimp, and that's why you see those three. So if you've done that and you have your greeting salutation cells filled out in your TNT database, this might be something that you can use. Maybe you already have Dear and their name set up. So you can use those, and I'll show you where you find how to edit some of this information in a little bit. But if you don't see them, that's why. The next thing that we're going to look at is social sharing. And so I've talked about this several times in some of the other sessions. Is the Facebook like button. Okay, and so you'll see here, just put the Facebook like in between the names, and I didn't want that. So I'm going to put it up here just to show you what it looks like. Okay. This is what I was talking about last week when we were looking at the reports, and I said copy and paste your URL, the URL from your newsletter, into MailChimp and post it. Somebody likes it, it's not going to increase your likes, the likes in your report. Okay, this merge tag right here is going to be what makes your likes go up if you decide to use it. Okay, so if I go into the preview mode, okay, and you can already see it gave us this little thumbs up sign, the little Facebook thumbs up. What happens when somebody clicks on that is it goes into their activity feed in Facebook. So it doesn't post on their wall, it doesn't post on your wall, it just puts one of those, an action in the activity feed that kind of scrolls in that upper right hand corner. The only benefit of this is that it gives people a way to interact with your newsletters. So especially if you have a lot of millennials on your list, they would probably like something like this. If you just know your partnership team, you know that they would enjoy giving you that kind of interaction, then maybe it's something that you want to include. Notice that the button is very little, so if you do include it, don't be too discouraged if it's not clicked on a lot. Some people might not have any idea what that is. Some people just might not see it. So it's just something if you think your team would really enjoy that kind of feature. The next thing that I want to look at for merge tags, let me get rid of our like here. Didn't work. Sorry about that. We want to look at the Facebook profiles, and I'm going to come back to the social sharing, but you'll see there's two different options. There's a Facebook profile and recent wall posts, and then there's just a Facebook profile. The Facebook profile and recent wall posts puts an image of you, some information, but then it also tries to grab between 1 and 3 of your previous Facebook posts, which sounds kind of cool, and it can also be very problematic. So if, for example, you shared a video or you shared an image or a link to something, and then you put one sentence that maybe is just a silly comment or some other kind of comment about the content that you shared, when it pulls it into MailChimp, it's not going to share the picture or the video or the website. It's only going to share the text portion of it. So you might end up with 3 wall posts that make no sense at all in your newsletter. That's why I kind of caution against using this feature, just because it can go very wrong for you. It can become a confusing element in your newsletter instead of something that adds anything. The other one is the Facebook profile. Let me show you what it looks like here. Okay, so it has a little Facebook icon, it has your profile image, it has your number of friends, and then it has this about me. So if you're going to use this, you're going to want to go into Facebook and actually fill out the about me portion of your profile so that it'll appear here. And then it gives people the opportunity to friend you. If you're going to use this, I wouldn't do what I just did. Don't put it at the top of your newsletter as a prominent feature. I'd probably put it down here somewhere towards the bottom. So if people want to interact that way, they can, but it won't disrupt their reading process, especially on a mobile device. You don't want that to be a prominent piece of at the beginning of your newsletter. So there's also one other thing with the Facebook profiles. If you're going to use the Facebook like or the Facebook profiles, you need to make sure that you've integrated your Facebook account with MailChimp. So we talked about all the steps for integration last week. This is one of the areas where that's important. The same thing with Twitter. They have these exact same options for Twitter. So if you're going to use Twitter or Facebook merge tags, make sure you've integrated those accounts. And then keep in mind that you can only share one Facebook profile. So if you're a married couple, only the husband or only the wife is going to be able to share this. Whichever account you integrated, that's the one that it's going to pull into these newsletters. If you want both Facebooks to be able to be seen, you're going to want to use what we showed you in the second webinar, which is this social follow bar thing. Down further here, you can put both Facebooks on there, right? So you get to choose which icons show up. So if I wanted a second Facebook, I would just go down here, add another service, choose Facebook, and now there's 2 Facebooks on here. And of course, you would want to put the person's name, the husband's name or the wife's name, next to the word Facebook so that people know what they're clicking on. Okay, so if that's what's important, that you have both Facebooks, the merge tag isn't going to work for you. Another thing that you can share, this is again something that I wouldn't use at the top of your newsletter, it would probably be better towards the bottom, is there's some social share icons. And this is going to be more if your advocates are really savvy with technology and they want to share your updates and newsletters with other people. This is going to provide a way for them to do that. And so you'll see here it says social share links. So if we click on that, it says MC Top Share. And you can see they have Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Google+, and Instapaper. And so what these are is when they click on them, it's going to give the person an opportunity to post your newsletter to their social media site. So if I clicked on the Twitter icon, it would open up my Twitter and give me opportunity to to post the newsletter as a tweet on my account. Okay, so if you do have people who like sharing, then this is a good solution for you. If you decide to use this, you'll want to make sure to talk to those partners about it. Most people won't think much about it unless they use these icons on a regular basis. So if you know you have advocates that might be interested in interacting in this way, you'd want to have a conversation with them, and maybe even pointing them, maybe do a video chat and point it out or something. But if you just place it on there and don't talk about it, it's very highly likely that it won't be used by many people. Make sure I got all of those. Okay, if you want to add your own merge tags, okay, so an example of this is I worked with somebody from a department in Wycliffe. To this day, I can't remember what the department was, but what she was trying to do is she wanted to send out an email that included the date that the people had attended an event, and that it would include the location that they attended at. So we wanted to add 2 new merge tags that weren't already inside of MailChimp. And so to do that, we actually put it into her Excel sheet. So when you're importing the contacts in, remember I showed you how to put them in an Excel sheet where you had first name, last name, email address, and then merge tag, and then you could add groups or something like that. This is a place where if you want more columns, that you could add them in the easiest. If you're doing it after contacts have already been imported, you'll still be able to do it. It'll just take a little bit longer than if you had done it initially. Okay, so in order to do this, we're actually going to go over to our list page, our page of lists. If you have, again, you might have 1, you might have 2. And to keep in mind that this is specific to your list. This isn't an account-wide thing. So we're going to go into the menu next to the list and go down to settings. And then we're going to scroll down to where it says list fields and merge tags. Okay, so there's a couple of things that you can do from the screen. The first thing is that you can delete categories that you no longer want. So like this TNT Connect information, I was playing with it earlier and it literally does nothing. Okay, and so there's no reason for this to stay in my database. And so I can actually click the trash can to remove it. Now if I don't remove it, it won't hurt anything. Okay, it's just if you like to have everything simplified, then this is maybe something that you would want to go through and do. If you want to add a field, now if you added fields to your database, it's automatic. If you added first name, last name, email, and you added another column, so maybe you put date in there, maybe you put location in there, and then you filled out that location information, it would automatically appear here as a field label and type. Okay, so it would automatically be here. It would most likely be a text field, and then you decide if you want to make it visible or not. Another thing that you want to keep in mind, you can also see down here where it says add a field. Okay, so you can just add a field and decide if it's going to be a text. You have lots and lots of options on the kinds of information that you might want to share or add to your database. There's a lot that you can do with this. The other thing that I really want to point out about this specific screen is this default merge tag value. You want to be mindful about what information are in these fields if you're going to use them in your communications. So if you plan to use the first name field, you need to check your database and make sure you have a first name for all of your partners, because maybe you have a church in one of them, maybe you have something else in one of those first name fields, or maybe you have nothing in that first name field. And so then it's going to look really strange to that partner if it says dear nothing, or hello or good morning, and they have a comma and a big space in the middle. Okay, so you don't want it to appear incorrectly. So you can either go through your database and make sure you have all of the names, or you can come to this screen and come to this default merge tag value, and whatever value you place here, it will put anywhere where you don't have data there yourself. So if you have a record without a first name, it'll pull from this field instead. So the research I did on this was all e-marketing. So it was their examples were valued customer and things along those lines. So you obviously won't want to put that. You might put friend or partner or something else that's appropriate in that field. But just kind of think through that if you know that you don't have all of your fields filled out, but you still want to use merge tags. Okay, so that's a pretty important feature. That's all I have right now about merge tags. Again, if you want to learn more about this, MailChimp has really great helps. If you just Google MailChimp merge tags, you will find lots and lots and lots and lots of information. If you get stuck and need help with something, you're always welcome to reach out, send me an email. It'll be a couple weeks before I'm able to help people right now because we're getting ready for a 2-day workshop. But after that, I meet with people all the time to help them specifically with MailChimp, so just keep that in mind. We're going to move on to final welcome and final unsubscribe forms. One thing that you're going to notice during this presentation is that it seems like I spend an inordinate amount of time on the final welcome form. So I'm going to spend a lot more time on the final welcome form than I do on the unsubscribe form, and than I do on the forward form, etc. The reason for that is because when you make edits to the final welcome form, it automatically makes edits to all of those other ones as well. And the method that we'll use in the final welcome email will be the exact same method that you use for the other forms as well. So even though it sounds like I'm only giving you a lot of information about one, that exact information is applicable to those different forms. Okay? So to create these different forms, again, these forms are specific to each list. So if you have more than one list, you're going to have to do it for each of them and not just the one. Okay, so we're going to go into, from the list, we use, I'm actually in campaigns here. Okay, so you want to go to the menu next to your list, and you want to select sign-up forms. Okay, and you'll see that there are 4 different options here. The form builder is the one that we're going to work with, but these other 3, the embedded forms, is if you're going to use this on a blog or a website that you've already created, and you want to, you know how they have like the embedded email forms that you can type directly into for the website? I'm going to create something similar to that if you use the embedded forms. Subscriber pop-up are those things that we all love when you're on a website and suddenly something comes up over on top of the screen and is trying to usually get you to buy something or subscribe to something, and you have to get rid of it before you can move on. That's what this is, okay? So if you use a subscriber pop-up, there are appropriate times to use them, okay? But you need to make sure to not harass your partners. So if you decide to use this on your website, you need to make sure that there are some settings where you could say, only open once for this person, or only open once this browser session. You don't want it to say open every time somebody comes to this page, because you will irritate people. Okay, think about how you feel when these pop-ups come up and you're trying to look at something. So just take that into consideration if you decide to go this route. Form integrations. Create sign-up forms using one of our integrations. I will actually show you some of this because this is an area where I'm not as familiar, okay, because it's going to integrate with Wufoo and Squarespace. I'm not well versed in either of these programs. If you are interested in more information, just come to this page and click on Learn More. MailChimp has great helps. I'm sure that the instructions they have are usually pretty clear, and they usually come with images and videos and all sorts of things. So we're going to go back up to the form builder where you would use, well, we're not to the subscribe form yet. Let me first talk about the final welcome form. So to do that, you can access all the different kinds of forms from this menu. So if I click the drop-down menu and go to final welcome email, okay, under subscribe, what this form does is if somebody uses your subscribe form, which I'm going to show you how to create in a little bit, if somebody uses that, then they will receive a second email that says, welcome, thank you for signing up for our list. Success, basically. You succeeded in signing up for our list. It's pretty common. I don't use it myself, but I know a lot of people who do, and they really like it. And so if it's something that you think is important, this is a place where you can set it up. Here you need to check the box that says send a final welcome email. Okay, otherwise it won't do it. You've just set it up for nothing if you haven't checked the box. And then this other option, let subscribers pick email format, plain text or HTML. You're going to want to turn that on if you have partners on your team who, say for example, are in PNG and they have to pay for any of the information they download. Okay, if you have somebody who has internet restrictions or download restrictions, it's a good idea to turn that on, because then they can sign up for the plain text and it'll strip out all of the colors and pictures and just make it like a regular email so it's easier for them to download. So that's what those two options are. As we scroll down in the build it section, you'll see that there's a bunch of merge tags. Again, don't change that. Okay, just leave these merge tags alone. They say exactly what they need to say. If you want to change subscription confirmed, this right here is the title, part of the title of your email. So what the subject of your email is going to end up saying is your list name. So it's going to say Wycliffe Partners subscription confirmed. It's letting them know that they've been signed up to that list. If you want subscription confirmed to say something a little different, you can change it, but it needs to carry the same message that is confirming, because that's what email is all about, is confirming that they've subscribed to your list. So be careful about changing that wording. If you want to leave this alone, if you are okay with the way this looks, it has a gray background, black letters, that's fine, then you can just leave this be and it will go out to people as long as you have this checked. If you want to design it or modify it to look a little bit more like your newsletter, then we can start changing the fonts and the colors and those sorts of things. So in order to do that, we scroll back up and go over to this Design It section. And you'll see there's lots of options. So we're going to start with the page background. And the page background is this big gray section right here. Okay. So if we want to change that, you just type in the color code. Now again, these color codes are available to you on Unity, and we'll make them available to you in the FAQs as well. Okay. I'm just going to turn mine black because it's easy. You'll notice that there's this pound sign. If you delete the pound sign, it's not going to change colors. Keep that in mind. You'll notice that I only put three numbers here. You usually need 6, but for black and white, it's okay if you only put 3. I'm not going to explain all of that, but that is just kind of an interesting feature. Oh, I guess it didn't work, did it? It just made me a liar. There we go. A lot of programs you can only put 3 and it'll let you do it. So it changed the background to black, but you'll notice now I can't see the name of my list. So we want to just hover your mouse over where the name is, and you'll see these 3 buttons show up. And I'm going to click Edit. I'm going to turn it white. So the way I do that is just highlighting it, and then going to this button here that it has. See, if I hover over it, it actually says text color, so it'll tell you what it does. And then I'm going to change it over to white. And then I'm also going to change the font. So I'm going to use a branded font. You'll see that there's several options here. Verdana and Georgia are the Wycliffe branded fonts. And then once you've made those changes, go ahead and click Save and Close. You can't see it because it's white. Okay, so now it says Wycliffe Partners. You'll see that there's this little message right here where it says your subscription to our list has been confirmed. If you hover over it, an edit button comes up. If you want to reword that, you're able to do so. I'm going to leave mine as it is. And then I'm going to scroll back up here, and we're going to switch over to body. No, just joking. First, we're going to go to header. So header is this section right here that has this orange box around it. I'm not going to make any changes to it. I don't recommend just changing the color of your header because it'll make your form look a little awkward. But if you decide that you like that, you are able to make some changes in here. Oh, no, you're not. They agree with me that it's awkward. Okay, so sorry. So you're not going to make any changes to this section of the newsletter, but you can go to the next section, which is outer wrapper. You'll notice with the outer wrapper that the orange box is now around both the bottom and the top. And so when I change the color, it's gonna change both of those areas at the same time. So if I come up here, again, make sure that you put the pound sign, hashtag if you want to call it that. Okay, and I just gave it a blue background. And you'll see it kind of frames it nicely. Okay, so once you've done that, we're going to go over, this is actually one thing I do change in the header sometimes for mine, is this margin bottom, margin top. What that's referring to is the amount of space between the word and the bottom here. So margin bottom is a space right here. Margin top is the amount of space over the words. So sometimes I'll go ahead and increase this. And then these are just personal preferences. You don't have to do this, okay? But if you make those changes, then you'll see there's now space over and under the title of the list. Okay. And then you can also change this button here, which we will do by So you can change the body. I don't typically recommend changing the color of the body, because the body is this white area. I know some people like to make them pastel colors, like light yellow and light pink, light blue. We encourage you not to do that, just because white is the easiest background to read text on. And so it's sort of like a best practice to leave this as white. So I'm not going to change my color. You can change the default text. So I'm just going to change this to match the title of my list I used for Donna. And then I'm also going to make this black. Okay. So just darken my text a little bit. You can also change the link color. So this link that's a darker blue, you can use one of the Wycliffe branded colors if you want. Again, those are all in the branded guidelines that will be in the FAQ. So if you could choose one of those colors and put that in there if you'd like. And so the forms lets you change this button. It's really best if you just go ahead and leave this information alone. You could change the color of the button, but what gets messy about that is you see this buttons hovered category. Right now it's like one color gray. When I hover, it gets darker. If you change this to green, you also would have to figure out a good hover color to change it to. Otherwise, it's going to be green and then dark gray. And so be careful messing with some of this. You can waste lots and lots of time changing things that aren't going to make a huge difference on these forms, okay? So be careful about getting too deep into the mud here. The last thing I'm going to show you is the monkey rewards. And there's just two options that you have. You have this black and white one. I personally prefer the white. Choose the one that you like, and it should. I didn't save it. There we go. And it should change it down there. Okay. Now you will notice that there's no save button on this screen. That made me feel some anxiety the first time I used it. There isn't a save button. When you travel away from the page, it automatically saves your information. So you're not missing anything, basically, if you're looking for your save button. The next thing, so that's all there really is to the final welcome email. So now when somebody uses a subscribe form to sign up for your newsletter, they'll receive this final welcome email. Now, if you subscribe the partner to the email, okay, if you add them to the list, they won't receive this. It's only if they add themselves. The next form that we're going to look at is the goodbye email. Okay, I called this a final unsubscribe earlier. That's because it's what it used to be called. Again, you have to check this box. So if you want it to actually go out, make sure it's checked. And then if we go ahead and scroll down, you'll notice that everything's already changed. Okay, it already has all the colors. It has the fonts that I used before. The only thing that you might want to change is this text right here. Now, what this is for is if somebody unsubscribes, it's a goodbye email. It's saying, well, here you see it says, we're sorry to see you go. And then you'll see that there's another subscribe button in case it was a mistake. So why it's really good to set this up is if you have partners who forward your email to other people, if those other people hit unsubscribe, they're going to unsubscribe your partner. And so what would happen if you had this set up is when that other person unsubscribed your partner would get an email saying you have been removed. Was that a mistake? And if so, here's how you resubscribe. Okay, so you're kind of putting in a little buffer in there saying, if this was a mistake, here's how you can get back on the list. So this is nice to have set up. Another really good one is, I think this is the one I want to show. No, that's not. But you'll see that there's lots of options in here, okay? So I was looking, they used to have, okay, this is the one I was looking for. So this is the unsubscribe form. So when people click unsubscribe, they'll get this form, and they'll type the email in so that they can unsubscribe. This is something that you might want to change if you don't want people to accidentally unsubscribe. You can alter the message a little bit if you think that would be helpful. Okay. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was the actual subscribe form, which they call Signup Form. A couple of things about the sign-up form. The first is this URL. So once you have this set up, you can send this you can use this URL as an email to send to people, you can create a hyperlink with the URL, and this way you can send your subscribe form to people via email and let them subscribe themselves. The Facebook or Twitter, we'll just post that to your social media accounts. The QR code is something I've seen people use a lot on their paper newsletters. Again, this is completely optional if it's something that you think would be helpful for you, is you can select small, medium, or large, and then save this image. And if you then use that saved image on your printed newsletter, people can scan it with their phone. And when they scan it with their phone, they'll get a subscribe form that allows them to sign up. I've seen recruiters use this. They found this really helpful when they're talking to a room full of students. They found people interact it really quickly this way. So there's some different atmospheres where this might be more helpful than others. But it's an interesting tool to have. Again, all the changes that I made on the welcome form have already been made here. Sorry. On your subscribe form, again, you'll have the name of your list at the top. And then you'll see this place where it says click to add message. So you might want to put a little statement in there just confirming to people that this is what they're signing up for. So you might put something along the lines of, please fill out in order to receive our Wycliffe Ministry update, or something along those lines. And then that'll appear at the top of all your subscribe forms. You'll notice that as I hover my mouse over each of the fields that these top 3 change colors. And it's because you're going to be able to do a little bit more editing in these than you could on the other forms. So one thing that you can change is you can change the order of these different fields. And all you do is left click and hold, and then drag your mouse down, just like you do when you're making a campaign or a template, right? When you grab one content block and drag it over into your form, it's a similar idea. And so you can just drag it up and down if you want. Probably want to put it between the first and last name. So that's one of the things that you can do. If you notice these boxes that have the blue frames, again, you're probably only going to have these if you integrate it with TNT Connect. Is the blue frame means that it's hidden. So even though I can see it as I'm setting up my template, the user is not going to be able to see it because it's showing that it's hidden. It's not visible to other people. And I'll show you how to alter some of that here in a little bit. First, we're going to click on the first name. So I'm just left clicking. And you'll see it brought up this right-hand column of some more options. The first is these first name field tags. You don't want to mess with either of these, okay, because it's going to affect other parts of your newsletters. I personally encourage people to make the first and last names required fields. The reason I do that is because if you have people using sign-up forms to sign up for your newsletter, and they don't give you their name, they only give you their email, then you might not know who just signed up to receive your content. So if you're going to really build a relationship with people, you need to know their names, or you can't send them more personalized emails, right? So that's why I encourage people to require that information. And requiring the information means that they won't be able to submit the form without it. So if they try to submit the form without a required field, they're going to get an error message saying, actually, you have to fill this part out before you can do that. Okay. We're not going to go through this part here. This has a save field. Okay, so none of the other forms, the final welcome form, the goodbye email, none of those had save buttons. This one does. So once you've made any changes, you want to click Save Field so that it keeps the changes you made. Okay. Right. Same thing for email. For email address, you can't make this unrequired because it's MailChimp and the whole purpose is emails. So it doesn't make sense for somebody to sign up if they're not going to give you their email address. With the greeting and salutations, again, so right now it's hidden. If you wanted it to be visible, you just click this other radio button. It would become visible. You can also delete the field altogether. If you think I'm never going to use this, then just go ahead and delete it and it'll be completely gone. Now you'll notice when I deleted it, so there's 2 options up here. There's field settings, which is what we've been working with. And then there's also add a field. Add a field will let you do just that. It's like the content blocks again in the template and the campaign. Grab something for the right, put it in the left. So if you wanted to be able to collect people's physical addresses, this is one of the ways that you would be able to do that. And so if I grab their address and pull it over, Oops, I just lied to you. You don't drag it over, you click on it. Okay, and then you can drag it up and down once it's over here. All right, so now I have their address information available. If you do this, I recommend that you don't make it a required field. Only require these top 3. So then if somebody doesn't want to share their street address information with you, you don't want them to not sign up because they don't want to give you that information. So if you leave this as optional, those who want you to have it will fill it out. Okay. And so you'll see there's lots of other information over here. So dates, birthdays, website, phone. So you can actually collect a lot of information. Even though we're not going to be able to go into the MailChimp Subscribe app today, one thing that you should be aware of is if you do decide to use that, the changes that you make to the subscribe form here are going to be the same changes that show up in MailChimp Subscribe. So if you want to be collecting the address with MailChimp Subscribe, you have to make those changes here. You cannot make changes to these, well, that's not true. You can't add fields from MailChimp Subscribe, but you can remove them. So if you have fields on this form that you decide later you don't on MailChimp Subscribe, I would prefer to be able to show this to you, but they have like a little eyeball. If you click on the eyeball, I'll put a slash through it, and that means it's invisible. And that's the way that you can remove any fields that you don't want to have on it. And that's basically how you set up the subscribe form. That's all there is to it. Again, once you have it, you can grab this URL and share it in social media, email, however you want to share it. The last thing that I want to share with you today is I'm going to go back to the forward form. Oh, we didn't do the forward form yet. I've talked about the forward form in a couple of our other sessions. And so I talked about it in our tip and tricks email when I said if somebody forwards your email to somebody else, that they can accidentally unsubscribe you. Or when that second person opens it, it doesn't count as an open from that person, it counts as an open from the original subscriber. So we had encouraged you at that point to make a forward button, right, or a forward link, so, and then to teach your partners how to use it. So today's going to be when I show you how to set that up. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is to go to this forward to a friend form. And again, it's already taken on the colors and the text options that I've chosen for all the other forms. So there's not a whole lot of setup that you have to do. But you also notice that there's not a URL for you to grab. Okay? And so the only reason that you would need to come to this screen is if you haven't set up any of the other forms. So you're not using a final welcome, you're not using the goodbye email, not using a subscribe form email, but I do want to use this forward one. Okay, so if this is the only form you want to use, I would go ahead and come to the screen and make sure everything looks the way you want before you start using it. Once it looks the way you want, then we would go to the campaign that you want to enable your partners to forward. Okay, so I'm going to use the one that we've been working with throughout the series. I'm going to go into Edit Design. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button to my newsletter. Okay, so this one says Partner Online. I'm just going to add a new button. It doesn't have to say forward to a friend. Okay, it could say whatever you want to say, but letting people know that it is a forward button. So forward to someone else, forward to, I don't know, forward to family, whatever you think is appropriate for this. And then we want to switch this to email address. And then we're going to type in the merge tag for it. Okay, so it's, which again, this should be in the FAQs, but it's asterisk, straight up and down line, and then in all caps. So it is important that you use all caps. You type forward, and then you want another straight up and down line, and then another asterisk. Okay, and now you've created your button. Of course, you can make all the changes that you've made before, right? So maybe you want it to be a different color. This obviously is not a branded color. Okay, I'm just picking a random color, so I don't have all the codes pulled up. You want to change it to make sure that you've matched the text that you've used previously. Maybe you want it to go all the way across the page. Okay, so you change all of your colors and settings and all those sorts of things like we have in the past. And then again, click Save and Close. Now remember, we said that you're going to want to point this out to people, right? So don't just put it there and hope people see it, because people are going to do things in the way they're used to doing them unless they know that there's a better way to do it. So if you just put this button there but don't say anything, people are not likely to use this to forward your email. But if you have somebody, so I have somebody on my list right now who her job is actually also teaching missionaries how to do newsletters. Well, sometimes she shares some of mine with them. Okay, but when she does, she forwards it. So it would be helpful for me to teach her to use the forward to a friend button on my newsletter so that she doesn't accidentally get unsubscribed. Okay. So if you have an advocate who does something like that, or an excited family member who loves sharing your newsletters, this might be something helpful to add to your newsletter, and then just teach them to use that instead of forwarding it through Google Mail or whatever their mail client is. One thing to keep in mind is that this probably isn't a good solution for a church who sends it out to a lot of people. So there are some churches who will forward the newsletter to the entire congregation, or they'll forward it to all the members of the missions committee or something like that. This forward to a friend probably is not a good solution for them because you're going to have to type in each person's name individually, and that might not be something they're willing to do. So in that case, when that happens, you'll instead want to give them either the subscribe form. No, not the subscribe form. Sorry. Sounded like a good idea in my head until I said it out loud. If we go to view email, okay, you can grab this URL up here. And this is what you might have to sit with your church secretary or whoever is going to be doing this, or you create a special email just for that church and make sure this link is included so that the church knows that they can forward that. You want to make it as little as work as possible for them. So whatever you need to do to enable them to send it out to people, go ahead and do that. But that's what we plan to cover today. So we talked about using merge tags. We talked about the final welcome email, the goodbye email, how to forward to a friend, and then we talked about subscribe forms. Again, usually we would have gone over MailChimp subscribe. Unfortunately, Zoom got in the way, and so that wasn't possible today. But again, if you're interested in learning more about that, just send me an email, and we'll make sure to get that to you. We have about 10 minutes before we need to go, so if you have any questions about anything we covered today or previous webinars as well, so we've had 4 sessions now. If you have questions about any of those webinars, feel free to go ahead and ask. Otherwise, we will be sending out an FAQ again later today that has lots of information of questions that people have asked in the past. We will have a link to the recorded session of today's webinar, as well as some other resources. It will also have a link to a survey. It's just, I think it's between 4 and 6 questions long. If there's any information that, especially over this whole series, if there's something that you wish we would have covered and we didn't, please let me know. I'm looking for some extra content for that third session.
So Jen, while we got people typing in their questions, I actually have a sample of my mailing list, the subscribe form that includes the mailing address and how I use it. If you'd like me to share my screen, I could do that.
Sure. Let me answer the question that just came in.
Yep.
So we got a question. Can you remind me where I would be able to see the previous webinars? Absolutely. So there's a couple of places that you can go. One is just go straight to YouTube. Oops. I have my caps lock on. And this will be in the FAQ as well, so you'll be able to get to this. But if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see that we have a bunch of different playlists. Okay, so here's all of our MailChimp webinars. We also have TNT and some spiritual development, some other ones. Again, we'll have this YouTube link directly in that email. And then we also have them in Unity. I know Unity was down yesterday, so we'll see.
It's back up today.
Okay, excellent. If you go over to Unity and go to Staff Resources, PD Resources, and then you scroll down to the PD training videos. Okay, so this one on the far right in the middle. and then go down to webinars. Okay, you'll be able to see most of our previous sessions. Now you'll notice that the spiritual development webinars aren't here, but it's because they're not PD webinars. If you go to the YouTube station, that's where they're at. Okay, we haven't got any other questions, so Michelle, go ahead and, did you need to share your screen?
It'd probably be for the best, then I can show it in the wild.
Okay, let me see if I can give you those permissions. Okay, you should be able to now.
Okay. So this is my subscribe list when people subscribe. And because we need their email address, I primarily email, but I do get a few. And if they want also a hard copy, this way I can get their physical address as well. As you can see, it's pink, so it's not required, but it does work really well. So, and I also have some hidden things for myself, my own use, for where they're living in the world, because I might want to send a targeted email at some point in time. That's it.
Yeah, so if you notice, she had an image of herself in that subscribe form. Let me pop over there real quick and see if I can show you how to do that, because somebody will have that question. Just a second to get over to my list page. Those are sign up format. This is what you did? Did you just add the image here?
Yes, I did, because I didn't want it to take up the whole thing. I just wanted it to be.
I'm going to make this as a different color so you guys can see what I'm doing. But when you type in here, you can also use this button to add a picture. Obviously, I don't want it to be 600. That would be way too big. My computer is not paying attention to me. There we go. Okay, so that's how the image got in there. And then you can just mess with it to make it look the way you want it to look. There's quite a bit that you can do with this if you want to. There's a little otter. Go ahead and stop the recording since nobody's asking questions.